The following is an editorial by the WBBA and the Bonzolium Corporation.
Hello! Alright, I'm not going to be playing in this episode, but here's the thing. You know what I just figured out? I mean, everybody knows this, every Bonham freak. But the reason why Bonham is so, I think, holy... Notwithstanding, the reason why Bonham is so Bonham, here it is, I think I finally managed to be able to verbalize it, is that Bonham, so far I think, has been inimitable, which we know means unimitatable. Now here's the thing. It boils down to a couple things. Especially in the past 20 years, the identity of drummers on recordings, I think, has been watered down through back in the day, Beat Detective, or just everything gets quantized now, right? So the subtle individualities of drummers these days, I think, is gone. At least the way music's currently recorded. And I think eventually producers are figuring this out. But back in the day, before Pro Tools and all this digitaling, being able to digitally put everything together perfectly, like pop everything to a 100% played perfectly, meaning note lead performance. Before that, obviously we had analog equipment, right? And back in the day, what they used to do is finally the 70s rolled around and somebody's like, well, you know, we got to keep it steady. Let's record to a metronome. Let's call it a click track. Here, let's make metronome, call it a click track, and make $10 million. All right, right? So, and the thing was, as time goes by, like diehard drummers, you'll think, well, you know, Mick Fleetwood is a great drummer. But there's no doubt there's two different Mick Fleetwoods. There's how he used to play, you know, shuffle, rockin' his arse off that you see in the old days, pre-1975-ish, or when he played kind of live with the modern Fleetwood Mac. But the point being that a lot of drummers, the 70s went on, a lot of drummers really started to kind of go for a much cleaner recorded, straight-up sound, right? And you have, like, Mick Fleetwood, Don Henley with the Eagles, good examples. A lot of the other pop stuff, you can really hear a nice solid time, but even then, it still wasn't 100% perfect. It wasn't. No matter how, human beings, no matter whatever, there'll be little imperfections in there, that if you somehow boiled all the guitar and everything down to one, you'd say, all right, well, this particular Eagles recording or Boston recording is 99.93% perfect, but it still sounded kind of human. I'm telling you. A lot of kids say I kind of feel sorry for them because if their human time thing has been sort of not passed down to them through music, like if everybody's so used to listening to like video games and totally modern stuff, they might not actually be able to appreciate 95 to 98% perfection. This is my theory. So, I gotta clean this up, which is a horror show. But anyways, it relates to Bonham. Bonham, just like all the other drummers of that era, they all have that mojo. Because, you know, before quantizing and everything, every drummer even had their own sound. I mean, Bill Ward from Black Sabbath, I mean, it goes on. Everybody. They really did. And part of that wasn't necessarily because they were each so special, was all those little teeny things that were sort of unique to them came through. They weren't edged out digitally, right? Capiche? You know where I'm going with this? Let's see if I can open this again and not get it all over my pee-pee shorts. But then what happened is most drummers, though, I'll say, this is going to be a controversial statement. But most drummers, in fact, I think almost all, are imitable. Meaning, I think it's a lot easier for somebody who's a good drummer but who really knew the mojo to like almost completely copy Stuart Copeland. I know that might be blasphemous. Or Phil Collins, that especially might be blasphemous. But of course, nobody will able to do it 100%. But definitely in that case, as you approach 99%, you can do it. The point I'm making about Bonham is, in a roundabout way, Moxie, is Bonham, out of even all those drummers, is the most inimitable. I have never heard anybody get within the 95% to 100 realm of copying Bonham. Now, I'm not saying copying Bonham be like, hey, everybody, swing, look at how I can copy him. But the fact that it is a way of sounding. It's almost like its own style. Some drummers have gotten close. The drummer in Barracuda, that drummer, is it DeRosier? Marvelous drummer. He gets really close, but there's still a little bit of edge, a sort of studio drummer sound to him. He has the feel. If if you listen to the drums only of that, it does. I think, especially if you were to EQ the drums or maybe sort of treat the drums sound a little more like Bonham's, many people would be tricked into thinking maybe it was Bonham. But I'm telling you, it's inimitable. A lot of bands will try to just put a heavy reverb on the snare and be like, God, listen how Bonham that sounds. I remember I re-recorded at CRC. It was a fellow there we recorded with, an engineer. Not a bad guy, but anyway, so we were there. And I remember about a year later, it's like, Terry, listen, I found this room above the Metro. In Chicago, there's a place called the Metro. Eventually, they turned the upstairs into the studio. But before they did, it was open. It was more live. I think they were just getting it going. He's like, you can get the ultimate Bonham sound there. I'm like, I'm telling you, the Bonham sound you don't record in a church or a cathedral. You get a room that's about 30-30 with maybe a 10-foot high ceiling, whatever. My opinion. But I've never heard anybody imitate Bonham. And like I said, anyway, the whole point of that room is I went in there and played and recorded it the way that he or a lot of other people think that it wouldn't sound like Bonham. Take my word for it. Unless I had utter and complete control of the microphones, which I don't know how to engineer. But anyway, although I'm not too bad. Barking orders. But the point being, think about it. Close your eyes and listen to all the Bonham tributes you've ever seen. Bonzo Bash, whatever. You know it's not Bonham playing. Do you know what I'm saying? There might be a few people out of all, especially as diehard Bonham fans, maybe a lot of Zeppelin fans, like, wow, this guy's playing just by Bonham. But we diehard Bonham fans, no. Nope. I mean, obviously Jason Bonham, who for the longest time was like, I'm my own guy. I mean, God love him. He went out and played his own way. He, played sort of in that classic sort of 80s metal, sort of, he did that on purpose. He wasn't trying to copy his old man from the beginning. He's just done it in recent years because I think he realizes maybe he has to pay to rent a little bit. Anyway, that is a great show, and I've heard Jason Bonham's a very nice guy. Jason, if you ever want to make a guest appearance on my videos, let me know. I'll pay you 20 grand. But the point being that, look at it, even those Bonham specials, nobody can imitate them. You can't get it. Some people sometimes will kind of get the sound. Like sometimes you'll hear recordings in the 70s and a little later where you kind of hear like, what's that, not Iron Maiden. Is it Iron Maiden? God forgive me, either Judas Priest or Iron Maiden. Nika McBrain. At some point there, those bass drums sound almost identical to Bonham. In other words, two things I think have been inimitable in the past since Led Zeppelin. The sound of Bonham drums that was achieved through Jimmy Page, but also you got to remember the sound of drums being mic'd in a room like that has been around forever. So it was nothing new. If you listen to a lot of recordings actually from the 60s into the late 60s, like Carmine Appice and Kenny Jones or whatever, I mean, you hear that live drum sound. It's just that in that regard, Bonham puts his drums and the way he plays really gave it the over-the-top sound. Anyway, the sound, I think, though, since then, even the regular 60s live drum sound, which sounded good, you don't hear it anymore. And I think when people nowadays try to imitate it, they'll use a lot of outboard gear, and it just doesn't sound the same. It's totally ersatz. Anyway, but especially with Bonham in particular, the man himself, I've never seen anybody pull off for 3 Zeppelin songs in a row where you'd think to yourself, like, this guy is John Bonham, or wow, he's doing a great, great job. I mean, for real. Anyone? Pam? Johnny? Bill? No. I'm telling you, not one. Think about it. Go back and watch all those shows. Close your eyes. I mean, nobody plays like him because he played just a certain way, like everybody does. You first come up and you play a certain way. He just happened to go down that route, and this is what he came up with. He was playing. God knows he wasn't the chops master, but he had some chops, and what he had was golden. But nobody can imitate it. I was like, the thing that I think I could finally verbalize would be that it's inimitable. Now, I'm not saying from here on it won't be inimitable. As more time goes on, the more people do. I mean, eventually, maybe somebody will nail it. But that is the thing. It's inimitable. That's the word for the day. So, anyway. I loves you, babies. Be good. And, I got to do the I'm Gonna Crawl video. But I just had 11 cups of coffee. So that's a song that kind of, has the Bonham Mojo, which I cannot reproduce if I have too much coffee. This is sparkling water. Thank God it wasn't sugar-based or I'd be freaking out because of the stuff all the drums. Anyway, that's it. Bonzo people. Let's think about that. Think about it. Inimitable. If you really just stop and think, that's kind of what it is. But I mean, and of course all the cool fills and everything he has, which go with, part of the package. But nobody can pull it off. There it is. Real fast, I'll say about jazz drummers. Now, back, of course, in the day, even jazz drummers today, they don't quantize jazz. That's why it's a lot more identifiable. A lot of these jazz drummers, like John Riley or some of these other guys, or I saw a thing with Questlove. I mean, he's not jazz, but you know what I mean. You can, with those guys, the less away you get from style of music, which requires quantization, you can tell the drummers apart, right? Which is cool. You know what I mean? And people are like, oh, that guy, like, it's nothing new. Bonham isn't the first drummer in the world that is inimitable. I mean, you know, everybody. I mean, nobody can. A couple guys I've seen come really close to Buddy Rich, but like Tony Williams, and I mean, you can't unless you're honestly sort of devoted 4 or 5 years of your life to really kind of go back and really try to imitate that musical path and learning path they went down. I mean, everybody has their own style, which is, I mean, even a guy just starting 2 months ago has his own style because he's gone a certain way, and you know, you never tried doing a paradiddle with that, and he got so used to it, and it's a lick that is good, that, you know what I mean, that eventually you could imitate. Everybody knows a drummer. You hear a song that's band, you hear a drummer's been playing for a year and a half, and they do a fill, and you're like, wow, that guy's pretty good, because it's a thing he developed. Anyway, jazz drummers and or music, that style of music, where there isn't quantization, you can really hear the individuality of drummers. But in rock and roll drumming, and in a lot of that drumming, but inimitable. That's what I think it is. So, whoever can emulate him with between a 90 and a, what would it be? I guess that's similar to a third standard deviation. Within the 99 point, if somebody can get, let's say even with Bonham, I think the 95% and up of quality, I think they should get an award. Seriously, I think a beam of light should be like, oh, and they get $10 million, and we figured it out. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, this is for Bonham geeks only. I know there's a bunch of people yelling down the stairs to the basement, which I'm in, saying, get a life, get a job. You're 55-year-old and you live with your grandmother. Actually, I'm married and not living with my mother, I can probably say. So, anyway, be good. Thank you.